Hey, hope all is well. This is late and I'm a little tired, but I'm gonna try to get through. So in the last so again, staying on this theme of like holidays, disclaimer, this video is more regarding like the Israelites. So I just wanted to give that disclaimer so you knew. If you're someone, anyone should know this, but particularly if you're someone who's Black and you are thinking about, maybe are we the Israelites? I feel like this would be a good video for you just to consider. So anyways, but it's good for anyone because we all need the knowledge. Okay, so disclaimer, this is gonna be long. So if you don't like long ones, this probably isn't gonna be for you. I'm gonna try to break it up, but it's gonna be long. So for this video, I wanted to talk, so the last video I did talked about the future. Remember, Yahuwah does not change, so it talks about the future as it relates to these holidays, or particularly this one, Christmas and Feast of Dedications, or Feast of Tabernacles in that video. But anyways, this video, I wanted to talk about the past because I think it's important to connect it. So the reading for this is going to be coming out of Maccabees. Start off right off the gate. If you are someone who is not familiar, you should probably read Maccabees, especially First Maccabees, at least First Maccabees 1-4, because it gives the background behind the Feast of Dedications. But I'm going to read out of chapter 3 for this one. But this video, I wanted to actually just share it with you guys, just a little bit of background about Maccabees. So Maccabees, is particularly this part, it deals with the Israelites and basically it also, and their persecution from the Greeks, right? So if you're not familiar with Hellenization, you want to look into that. So I'm just giving a little bit of background. So basically the chapters that I'm suggesting that you read, First Maccabees and then 1-4, it gives you a greater account of like the persecution of the Israelites under the Greeks, right? So it talks about Hellenization. And Hellenization is, if you're not familiar, for those of you that are not familiar, basically it's like when the Greeks, they wanted to spread their culture, right? So they wanted to spread their culture. And so as it relates to the Israelites, they were doing this through horrible persecutions. So I'll use this example of today, right? So, because this is, feasible. So let's say you're an Israelite today, right? Because this is an example. And let's say you wanted to keep the feast days, you wanted to serve the Lord. You're like, yes, I want to do this. And then let's say that the US government showed up at your door, knocked on it, and basically they were going around to the Israelites and saying, we don't want you to keep your customs and your ways. You have to serve our ways. You have to come under our culture, keep the traditions that we tell you to keep and serve us. And so you're trying to keep the ways of the Lord. And so you're like, oh no, I think I'm going to serve the Lord. And then they're like, great, we're going to kill you and your whole family. And I know that sounds dark, but I'm just trying to paint you a picture. That's pretty much Hellenization. This is kind of what the Israelites were going through. It was intense persecution. The Greeks came in, right? It was a change of power. The Greeks, Alexander the Great died. His kingdom was broken up. The Greeks came in. The Greeks were like, we're gonna pretty much murder our culture into you. If you don't keep our culture and our ways, we're gonna murder you. So yeah, so the Israelites were going through a lot of persecutions. Shout out, this is also what I wanted to say really quickly. And we'll talk about this, but Christmas, the ancestor of Christmas and all these, like, again, Greek-Roman holidays, you can put that in the bag. So when like the Greeks went around murdering Israelites because they wouldn't keep the Greek culture, or if they didn't want to do the Greek culture under Hellenization, when they went around persecuting them, one of the things that they was kind of passing out was these like holidays, festivals, and all that. It was terrible. They desecrated the temple. They murdered people. It's awful. So I'm just setting the scene so that you kind of know the background. But you should read Maccabees so that you can get a fuller account. And you should also look into Hellenization. But that's just kind of a bit of a background. But what I wanted to talk about in this video was just this fact of Feast of Dedications and just the principle of like how that came to be. So for this, I wanted to just talk about the different holidays with that background. So keep that background in your back pocket. So this is something that actually, I go to church, and at my church, they subscribe to my beliefs that Black people are Israelites. So in church, they were talking about this, and I thought this would be great to bring out to you guys. So just a little bit of background again. When I first read Maccabees, this is a plug. When I first read Maccabees, this was a couple of years ago, but what I took away from it, what did I take away from it? So one, I took away just the brutality that our people went through. Oh, also I took away Tulsa. So if you read Maccabees and you know about like the Tulsas, or I think it was all those massacres in the 1920s where they were going through and leveling and murdering in all those Black towns. When I first read Maccabees, it spoke to me. I was like, oh, that reminds me of Tulsa, because you got to understand, I'm reading this with the understanding that the Israelites are Black, and these are the Greeks going through desecrating temples, desecrating towns, doing murders. It's terrible. So for me, I pulled out of that Tulsa. I also pulled out that our own people, so read Maccabees, but our own people will sell us out for the dominant culture, because that's also another thing that happened in Maccabees, is the Israelites were selling each other out. Then you had Israelites who were just, who after the murder, while being murdered and persecuted, they just went on ahead and kept Greek culture or the Hellenistic culture because they didn't want to be persecuted anymore. Then you had Israelites that were fighting, right? So that's just kind of, again, a picture. But that was what I pulled out of it. Interestingly, what they taught in church, which is what I'm going to share here, is just this idea of why we don't talk about the Feast of Dedications. And so I had to give you that background to set it up. But he posed a really great question, and that was, when you bring it up to knowing that background and that history, when you bring it up to today, why do you think we don't talk about the Feast of Dedications? Right? So think about what I'm saying from an Israelite perspective, knowing that the Israelites are Black. Why do you think that, because he made a great point, why do you think that we talk about Kwanzaa, we talk about Christmas, we talk about Hanukkah, but listen to what I'm saying, particularly if you're Black, why is it that we don't know about Feast of Dedications? Why is it that you can't go to a store and get a Feast of Dedication card? So for me in my age group, when I was coming up, I didn't know nothing about no Feast of Dedications. What did I know? I knew Kwanzaa, I knew Christmas, and I knew Hanukkah. I didn't know nothing about no Feast of Dedications. And the reason I'm saying this is because Feast of Dedications is actually, again, what's in the Bible, and it's in Maccabees. So why don't we know about that? And what he was proposing was, and I think this actually does have something to do with it. The reason, so remember, if from an Israelite perspective, you have to understand that we are in the nations of systems that are under our oppressors, right? So under the age of Maccabees, they were under the Greeks. We know if you play throughout, it was Greeks and then it was the Romans. The Romans conquered the Greeks, right? But it was still the Israelites under those nations being persecuted. Well, today that hasn't really changed. And a theme of these nations is to give the Israelites their customs, their ways, and their holidays. And so I'm just saying it's actually kind of true. Oh, and also from a spiritual perspective, a theme, this is all throughout the Bible and history, a theme is to get the Israelites to not serve their God. I'm telling you, just listen, stay with me. A theme is to get the Israelites to not serve their God. So think about it. Why is Feast of Dedication not taught the way it's taught in the Bible? Why do we have all these variations? Why is there Christmas and Kwanzaa? Well, Kwanzaa is not Feast of Dedications, but I'm just saying, why don't we have what it actually is in the Bible? And his proposal was, one of the reasons that we don't talk about Feast of Dedications, I'm saying just plain and simple as it actually is because we have to understand that we're in the nation of our captivity. And the nation of your captivity is never going to advertise your win. and that actually makes sense, because think about what I'm saying. If you know that the Israelites are black, and you know that part of the main thing with the Feast of Dedications is the Israelites took back the temple. If you have to read Maccabees in order for this video to make sense. But effectively, it was the Israelites taking back the temple. They beat the Greeks. So they beat the Greeks. So they beat the Greeks. And so the imagery of Israelites beating the Greeks is pretty powerful. And when you're in the nation of your captivity, they're never going to give you an image that is of their defeat. That's pretty much what the pastor was saying. And that's true. That's so true. Because I thought, like, why don't we have all this other stuff, particularly if you're black? They're going to give you Kwanzaa. Kwanzaa's not, listen, I'm black too. I love my people. You ain't in no Kwanzaa. If you're an Israelite, Kwanzaa's not your thing. It should be Feast of Dedications. Or it should just be, it should not be Christmas. Christmas, again, is a holiday of your oppressor. Hanukkah, I was supposed to read this scripture. Hanukkah is still Feast of Dedication, but it's the wrong image. That's under Judaism. So I actually do want to read this scripture out of Maccabees, and it comes out of Maccabees 1, First Maccabees 3:48. And they changed the translations in some of them, but I'm just going to read this here out of the Sefer. So there's a point to this. It says, and they laid open the Sefer of the Torah, wherein the heathen had sought to paint the likeness of their images. What that's saying is the heathens, or the other nations, they seek to take this book and paint their images over it. They seek to change the images to their image. That's what happened, by the way. Plot twist, that's what happened. They changed the images to their images. So I'm trying to share with you guys, think about what I'm saying from an Israelite perspective. Why don't you know about the Feast of Dedications? Why do you know about all these other things? So you know about Kwanzaa, and that ain't your people. That ain't it. You know about Christmas. That makes sense because it's Greco-Roman. It's a holiday of our oppressor. So they gave us that. And then that keeps us not serving our God, which keeps us in sin. And then there is Hanukkah. Now, Hanukkah's still close, but they didn't give it to you. They gave you Hanukkah, which in the Bible is Feast of Dedications. But in Hanukkah, the image is changed. Am I making sense? They changed the image. So even under Hanukkah, even though it's the right occasion, it's like the right event, the image is changed. The image just changed. You're not going to see your image. And it's called Hanukkah. But in the Bible, it's called Feast of Dedications. And I'm just putting this out there. This is only not going to be for a lot of people, because I know a lot of people don't agree that the black people are the Israelites. I'm making this video for black people if you're open to knowing that you're the Israelites, because I want you to start thinking, why don't you know about the Feast of Dedications? Why were you given Kwanzaa, Christmas, and Hanukkah? Why didn't they just give Feast of Dedications? It's because if you talk about the Feast of Dedications under accurate historical biblical application, it's the Israelites beating the Greeks. And in this country, they're never going to advertise a win against these other nations. They're just not going to, especially a biblical win. But I think that's what I think he's right. I think that's what it is. Why can't I go into the store and I see all these other cards, but I don't see the Feast of Dedication, and that's actually in the Bible? That's what Jesus celebrated. Why can't I see that? It's because they don't want the truth. I think that's what it is. They don't want the truth. You can get Hanukkah, you can get Christmas, and you can get Kwanzaa. But you just should have the Feast of Dedications. And the imagery would be powerful if you subscribe to the thought that the Israelites are black, this thought of beating the Greeks. But in this land, they're not going to ever show you that. So they give you this other stuff, and they give you Christmas, which keeps you in disobedience of your God. And as long as you're in disobedience of your God, he doesn't hear our prayers as a nation. So that's just something to think about. If you're black, please look into the Feast of Dedications and read it for yourselves. And I'm going to stop here. I'm going to run out of time, but But yeah, that's it. So just look into the Feast of Dedications and pray about it. And I hope that this blessed you. Okay, bye.